everybody. Today's the entry. Today's April 27, 2021. So, talk a little bit about something not quite to do with fitness, but definitely to do with health. And it has to do with various addictions. And a friend of mine, Rosie Moore, posted an article the other day about addiction. And let me see if I can summarize this okay. The idea being that addiction is far more than just a physical dependence on various drugs, say cocaine. And they used a couple of examples to make their point. One of them was that they put, I think, a rat alone in a cage, and he could drink water that had heroin or some other addictive substance in it, or he could drink regular water. And the rat eventually would always go to the water that had the drug, and eventually to the point of dying from it. And people were just showing this at one point as being, the nature of addiction. But then somebody else came up with um, another experiment because they thought, this rat is all alone, it has nothing. So they created this wonderful place where the rats would be, and there would be all kinds of other rats and lots of community, and the rats had nothing to do but eat food, play games, make love, etc. And they had the same two water bottles, one with a drug, one without. And apparently the rats didn't even bother with the cocaine because they were happy. And the gist of it was that what was missing was connection. I was going to say human connection, in this case, rat connection. And that if people had a good, healthy social thing, that this was what they had been looking for with the drug, what was lacking, they were trying to fill with. And they also use the example of the Vietnam veterans, quite a significant number of them who had gotten into heroin while in Vietnam and expected that there would be a lot of people coming back to the United States after the war with serious drug dependency problems. And once they got back into social connections and things like that, there were far fewer than anticipated. Most of them just simply stopped using the drug when they weren't in the horrible environment of a war-like situation. So the article tends to say that connection is what's needed. And my comment on it, she posted this, Rosie posted this on Facebook, I said, I do think there's relevance to it, but I think it lacks some of the complexities. And where I'm going with this is, and of course I'm 30 years clean, so I have some firsthand experience with drug addiction. And I'm referring to drug addiction, but I think this applies to gambling, sex, spending, food, anything, the kind of compulsive behavior that people have. And the nature of addiction is something you do compulsive, you can't stop, and it's something that gives you short-term gratification and typically long-term pain, and often hurts the people around you. And I think that connection is just one of the things that is involved, because it's, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, of course, the first one is just basic survival, food, shelter, warmth and all that. And then after that comes the social emotional. And then after that comes the mental, the need for personal growth and things like that. And if I remember correctly, after that, it's this sort of spiritual, small s spiritual, a sense of meaning, a sense of something, making a difference in the world, in your life, and things like that. And I think the example of using connection, they just stopped on that one thing. But I think what happens with addiction is that one or more of those basic human needs is not being filled. And all those things do one thing. They make us have a happy, fulfilled life. If you don't have all those things, you're not happy, you're not fully fulfilled. So if you have those things missing, drugs or sex or spending or gambling or what have you can give you sort of an imitation of what fulfillment might feel like. Euphoria is not fulfillment, but it's kind of a cheap knockoff of it. And so what happens though is it's never quite satisfying enough, which is why uh, addicts just keep doing the same thing over and over again, hoping to get a different result. But of course, what they're doing is they're barking up the wrong tree, so to speak, because they're not doing what needs to be done to get all those other things, because those things, of course, are often matters of long-term gratification. Uh, Things that you have to work for days, weeks, months, years, decades. And whereas, of course, a drug is instant. And even though it's a cheap knockoff, it's quick and it's easy. And I think that has more to do with it than, not more to do with it. I don't think the idea of the experiments was necessarily wrong, but it was incomplete. So it's kind of like there's a hole somewhere inside, something that's not filled, that needs to be filled with one of those needs. And no matter how much you try to fill it with something else, you feel a void, you try to fill the void. No matter how much you try to fill it with something else, it's never going to be enough. Now, that's not to discount, there's also um, the physical dependency on the drug itself that's created. And I think that can also be very powerful. But I do think that um, when people, for example, do go into recovery, whether it be 12-step programs or some other method, um, I think after, depending on the drug, I guess, the first 6, 12 weeks, definitely within a year, the physical dependence they can beat. Not to say that that's easy, that might be really tough, but it's after that that if you don't have the fulfillment that comes from having a complete things, and through having a purpose, having self-esteem that comes from all those things, then you're always going to be very vulnerable to doing that, to going back, because yes, you stop getting the quick fix, cheap knockoff, but you still haven't got the true fulfillment, and so you remain with that hole, and so it won't work out for you. So that's just my thought, maybe to Rosie here, um, elaborating on your post that you had done before. Matter of fact, I'll see if I can add a link to this video to her comment. Bye for now.